Good day there. Welcome to today's edition of the show on King C TV. My name is Chibueze, and thanks for joining me. Today we'll be talking about a very important topic, one that has been recurring over the past few years in Europe and especially in Austria since the inflow of immigrants within Europe. To talk about the show, I have two guests joining me, and one of them on my right, immediate right, Mr. Benny Agoze. He is a graduate of psychology and a student of psychotherapy at the prestigious Sigmund Freud University, Vienna. And he's also the president of the National Union of Nigerian Students in Austria. And next to him is Mr. Jerry Black. He is a master's student of tourism and leisure management at the University of Applied Sciences in Krems. He's also the founder of and CEO of One Day Trip, and he's as well the vice president of NUNSA. Welcome on the show, Jenka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chibeze. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Before we go into the topic proper, we will just go on a very short break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. As I already introduced my guest, Mr. Benny, you are the president of NUNSA. Would you please shortly tell us about NUNSA?
Okay. NUNSA is a student organization in Austria. As the name stands, it's not just a word, it's an acronym. Okay. That means National Union of Nigerian Students in Austria. And this organization has been existing since 1960, when Nigeria got independence. So some group of Nigerian students moved to Europe and they landed in Austria. So for them to survive, they had to network together, bring themselves together to form this union.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. So as a student, as someone who is living in a home in a country other than his home country, how would you define the term integration? And this question goes to Mr. Jerry Black.
Thank you very much for having me here. Integration, I would define it like different people perceive integration differently. But in my own view, I see integration as it's a process which you need to understand your environment. You also need to understand how it functions, and also then you come to understand how you could be part of the environment. So if you put this all together, then this is how I define integration, so that you benefit from the environment also benefits from you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry Black. Mr. Benny, do you have something to add to this definition?
Definitely. There is a popular saying, a popular adage that when you go to Rome, you behave like the Romans. So this is an adage that defines what social integration is all about. The word integration is gotten from the root word integer, which we know in the basic mathematical terms as a whole number. So an integer cannot be a decimal point, cannot be a fraction. So that means that integration has to do with bringing yourself with unity with the whole country. You have to learn the customs, the values, then the language, so that you get to be incorporated. You benefit, like Mr. Jerry said, from all the benefits that there is.
Thank you so much. Also, like the process of integration is always seen as a very tedious task. Depending on the area of integration, because there's like this part of integration that centers on education, on language, or some center on food, being able to settle down with the foreign culture. So which, as an international student, do you think was actually more tedious for you to go through, Mr. Benny?
Yeah, the area of language for an adult, like I was when I came to this country, it was difficult to learn the language. Learning the new language was like one of the hardest things I've done in my life. I will learn one, I'll forget it tomorrow morning. So it took time before I could start understanding common basic communication on the streets of Vienna. But it is worth it.
And how important do you see this? How important do you see this relating it to living in a different society?
You cannot live in a society like ours without speaking the language. You cannot go to offices. Most times you have to look for an interpreter who will follow you to the office because they wouldn't want to speak your own language or speak the language you understand. So when you own the language of the people, you have a key. It's like a key that opens every door. You can enter any office and you can communicate. But integration is not just about speaking the language. It goes beyond that.
Yeah. I actually had intention of throwing this question to Mr. Jerry Black because I know that it goes beyond language. Or what other aspect of integration do you find the most challenging for yourself apart from the language?
I think the social mentality was a big issue for me at first, and because it was the first time in my life I felt a challenge as an African in a different culture, which I feel there's segregation between how I was perceived, accepted. But the integration which I faced as a big challenge was language, as he has mentioned. The food was a challenge. The way the people perceived me as an African was another challenge. But like he addressed, the bigger picture is if you can communicate and you have control of the language in which it's being used, then it's more easier for you to like add these various factors together and be a part of the society.
So thank you so much for that. I was also, with regards to this, I had a conversation with someone a few days ago about integration, and the person mentioned that integration is a thing of choice. How would you react to? Do you agree with this, Mr. Ben?
Yeah, they say you can drag a horse to the river,
okay,
but you cannot force the horse to drink the water. It is a choice. Everything about life is choice. You can choose to survive. You can also choose to die. People commit suicide every day. It's a choice. So, but when it comes to integration, it has a greater benefit. If you get incorporated, if you get the language, if you get the customs, if you get the values, it yields more benefit than choosing not to. And there are a lot of people in this our society that have been here for 20 years, yet they choose to live as an African in Europe. When you are living for example, a Nigerian in Europe, speaking Nigerian language without speaking Austrian language, you are the one that's going to lose, not the host society.
Yeah, this is true. So now, does integration have to do with, or does it have anything to do with losing your own culture or losing your own lifestyle, the one you grew up with?
Not at all. There's what is called forceful assimilation of another person's culture, when you have to lose your own identity. That is not what integration is all about. In integration, the major goal is to achieve stability and peaceful coexistence between the newcomer and the host society. You don't have to lose your identity to get properly integrated. Yeah. You have to maintain your identity, maintain your own social, cultural background. Then, for you to benefit in the new host country that you are, you have to also learn their own way of living, so that you can benefit, because they don't need you. You are the one that needs them. So you have to make sure that you learn their custom, learn their values, learn their languages, learn their way of life, so that you can be accepted in their society. Yeah. You don't have to lose your own.
Yeah. So what would you say actually, Mr. Jerry, what would you say actually helped you in your process of integration?
I think to share more light on this point, integration is a choice. And the reason why I say it's a choice, he said it, if you are willing, then it's possible. But if you are not willing, you can forget it. So I think first is come willingness, and the second is come like the persistence, because everything we just mentioned now, if you're willing, then you need to practice all the stuff, to learn the language, to understand how it works here, different from the way in Africa. Life is really fast here. You understand? People, every second counts. So, which it means you need to join this flow. So by the time you're willing, you persist, and together you can able to adapt and integrate properly. And this is why I agree it's a thing of a choice, not a must. Yeah.
So what would you say enhanced your integration over the years?
In my own case, I was willing because I'm a very determined person, and I knew like being in another environment. If I don't become part of this environment, I am the loser here. So the environment is functioning on its own. On our own, I mean. So in my own case, when I came, I understand the environment and I realized the biggest key was to learn the language. So it's a stepping block. And if the viewers don't know, actually, I had to drop out of school to learn the language just to find my space in the environment. And this was the biggest step. It's like 50% of the entire process.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you short there, but before we go on, we will have to go on a very quick break. And then by the time we come back, we have some more topics to talk about. Please stay tuned.